Goblins, puppets. Movie of the month for December. G'day to all you lovely people and welcome back to my channel. I'm Kathy and today it is time for Movie of the Month for December. I have decided that I will not be continuing this series. It isn't extremely popular, not many people view the videos, so this is going to be the last movie of the month. I do, however, love talking about films, so I will continue that. I just won't commit to talking about them every single month. So the film I'm going to feature for this month, given that it's December, is something suitable for the whole family, and that is Labyrinth. 1986. It was directed by Jim Henson. It stars David Bowie and a very, very young Jennifer Connelly, who has gone on to much bigger and greater things. I think actually this might have been her first performance. It also stars a lot of Jim Henson's puppets, who I think have distinctive personalities in this. The script was written by several people, but is most heavily influenced, I think, by Terry Jones from the Monty Python team. And you can definitely see the influence of Monty Python throughout this film, particularly with the humour. It is a fantasy film, one of the few from that era that I really enjoyed. In truth, there haven't been a lot of fantasy films. It just never seemed to be a very popular genre. Not for many years, I don't think. It's become more popular as a genre now. But back then, there were few and far between. And this is one of the best of that era. Just like Never Ending Story. The plot is about a young girl on the cusp of womanhood, played by a very young Jennifer Connelly, who is frustrated with having to babysit her young baby brother Toby. And she wishes him away to the Goblin King Jarrett, who actually turns up and takes the baby away. I thought that was a little creepy, but this isn't a horror film. It is fantasy. In order to rescue her young brother, Sarah has to go through this amazing labyrinth that is very reminiscent of Escher paintings, I think, anyway. The Goblin King's castle is in the center of this labyrinth, and during her journey, she comes across all these wild and wacky and strange characters played by puppets. Sometimes there is almost this sense of menace to this film, but in essence, it is a fantasy film. It is part of this young girl's journey from puberty into womanhood. There is no doubt that it is heavily influenced by films like Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland, and several different children's books. But Henson's visualization of this world is, in turns, bizarre, creepy, strange, and amazing, and spectacular. The visuals really are one of the most powerful features of this film. I really loved all the different characters that were introduced into this story. Certain of the creatures are actually hilarious. I think there is this one scene, I can't remember what they're called, where all these creatures that look like part monkey, part something else. Every time I see it, I just giggle like crazy. I just love that scene. And yet, as I said, the atmosphere sometimes is almost oppressive. You're not quite sure if Sarah is going to succeed or whether she is going to fall victim to the Goblin King's spell. Visually, this film is beautiful. I think it is quite stunning, actually. And the music is spectacular. There are quite a few David Bowie songs, and I am a huge fan of his, so I really enjoyed that aspect as well. It is bizarre though. It is an odd film, no doubts about it. As for the acting, I think it's only the baby Toby David Bowie and Jennifer Connelly who are real in this film. Everyone else are puppets. But, as I've already mentioned, Henson is able to imbue these puppets with characters. You were given the impression that they were real, regardless of how comical they look, because they are puppets. That is a real skill, I think. It's not always easy for me in particular to overcome that, to feel that this is actually a real person as such, or whatever creature they are. But Henson was very, very good at that. And I think it helped having also real live people in this film. I can't recall the name of the little character who accompanies Sarah throughout the Labyrinth, but he was a great nuanced character. He was a conflicted character too. Connelly, I thought, was adequate. I'm not going to say she was outstanding. I enjoyed her performance, but I felt sometimes she was a little wooden. Bowie, on the other hand, is fabulous. So over the top. He was so charismatic though in this film. And yet really he always was in anything he did. He is a real highlight in this film. He plays the character over the top because he is over the top. He looks strange and bizarre as well with this spiky hair, and yet he has that amazing face with such incredible bone structure that you can't help but just stare at him every time he's on the screen. And even though Connelly plays a young girl, there is definitely a sexual chemistry between these two characters. She is clearly not just going on a journey to rescue her brother, but also, I think, changing into a young woman. One of my favourite scenes is definitely the dance that they have. I just thought visually it was amazing. It looked beautiful. But then there are so many other scenes that I love, like I think it's like the Escher staircases. But I like Escher as well because they never made sense to me, those paintings. And then there is the Labyrinth itself and some of these great characters. And there was just so many imaginative aspects to this story. Things that is why I love fantasy so much. Ironically though, back then, I did not read any fantasy. That started several years later in the 90s, but I always did like fantastical films. The film, however, did not do well, neither in the box office or with critics. The critics panned it. They panned Connelly, they panned Bowie, they panned the film itself. However, it has now gained a really huge cult following, and critics have changed their attitude about this film, which always bothers me actually. It's like if a film is popular, then they decide, oh no, it must be a good film after all. I think that certain critics have a very narrow vision of what is a good film and what is a bad film. And sometimes it doesn't have to be a great film. It just has to have certain aspects like great music or visuals or acting or plot or something, or a combination that appeals to viewers. Sometimes I think they're a little too hard on films, but it always amazes me when I hear critics have changed their opinions about films that they panned years ago. Regardless, I think it deserves the popularity it has. As I said, it is now considered a cult classic and well deserved. I'm not sure how many people do know of this film. I think if you're my generation, you probably do know it. Perhaps some of the younger generation doesn't. I don't know. I'd be very curious actually to find out if they know of this film, if they've seen it. It is definitely well worth watching if you haven't seen it. It honestly is so imaginative and beautiful to look at. The visuals are spectacular. I also thought that the story was really good. It is a simple story, true, but it is the journey that matters, not the actual getting from A to B as such. I highly recommend Labyrinth if you haven't seen it, and if you have young kids, you should definitely let them watch it. However, they might find some scenes a little spooky, a little creepy. Let me know if you have seen The Labyrinth and what your thoughts are on it. You know, I always want to hear your opinions. Well, that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, you can do the usual. You can like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I hope you all have a beautiful day, and I will see you next time. Bye.